All right, sorry, hold on. Good evening, everyone. It's 7 p.m. and I would like to open the October 1st, 2020 school committee meeting. This meeting is being held virtually through Zoom. The town of Littleton began conducting remote participation / Zoom meetings pursuant to Governor Baker's emergency order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law on March 19th, 2020. Since that time, unanticipated legal concerns relating to the open meeting law have been brought to our attention by the town clerk. Those concerns were supported by the Attorney General's office and confirmed by town council. One concern is that the chat function allows a parallel text conversation to a board's public meeting. Chat is essentially running commentary that is occurring, but is not moderated or followed by the chair. All participants and listeners may not be aware of comments being made because some meeting participants join by phone and do not see these conversations. Another concern is conversations between residents within the chat room, which are not incorporated into the public record. In response to these concerns, the town will implement the following changes, which in no way prohibit any member of the public from participating in discussion and sharing information during a public meeting, and will ensure that all listeners and participants have equal access to this meeting. People that join the Zoom meeting are set so their microphones are muted. If you called in by phone, please use *6 to mute or unmute your phone. So that the meeting can occur in an orderly fashion, we ask that people who join keep their microphones on mute so background noises do not interfere with the meeting. If you wish to participate in the meeting, please use the raise your hand function available on Zoom, or if you called in by phone, dial *9, which will activate the raise your hand function. The meeting host will notify the chair of the raised hand, and the chair will determine whether and when to allow public comment. When called upon, participants should unmute, then state their name and address. After speaking, we request that the participant return their microphone back to mute. All right, so now we have that out of the way. I'd like to go to the consent agenda, the minutes from September 24th, 2020, and oath to bills and payroll.
Make a motion to approve the minutes from September 24th, 2020, and oath to bills and payroll.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none, I'll remind everyone that all our votes on Zoom are roll call votes. Matt?
Matt Hunt, yes.
Justin?
Justin McCarthy, yes.
Brad?
Brad Austin, yes.
And Mike Fontanella votes yes as well. Tillen Rossius may come in a little bit later. She is at high school curriculum night as a parent. All right. Next on the agenda, we will have at least two sections of the meeting for input from interested citizens, one now and one closer to the end of the meeting. If there's anyone attending the meeting who would like to speak before the school committee, please use the raise your hand function, and our moderator, Dorothy Malone, will get you in front of us. Is there anyone who would like to speak before the school committee?
Not have any raised hands.
Okay. All right. All right. First on the agenda is an update on the negotiation regarding the Memorandum of Understanding with the Littleton Educators Association. Just briefly, we have had a very productive couple of weeks. We are reasonably close to an agreement. One of the issues that we are negotiating does require some input from a third-party vendor, and we are awaiting information from that vendor to see if we can do what we're negotiating between the LEA with. We had hoped that maybe that would get done earlier this week. Unfortunately, it was not. So we need to hold off a little bit longer. But just so everyone knows, we are, doing well with the MOA negotiation. We have made progress, and we hope to have it completed in reasonably short order. Thought we would hopefully have a little bit more to say about that, but we don't. So that covers that. Any questions or any comments on that from the school committee? All right. Yep.
Just for this, I mean, that third party information is air exchange rates, or
It's related to HVAC.
Okay.
Yep.
all right, very good.
And it's with a vendor that we have not used yet prior in any of the work that we've done to prepare for reopening. And it's just a timing issue. They're busy. That we're not the only ones trying to get in their queue. So we're just trying to get some information from them about their turnaround time. And when we get that, we can go back to the LEA with that and continue the negotiation and see how we do. All right. All right. Next on the agenda, we'd like to have a discussion on protocols regarding social gatherings by students. Dr. Clenchey, do you want to open this up?
Sure. Back on September 15th, Chief Bernard and I released a press release asking our residents to continue to adhere to COVID-19 safety protocols. In that press release, we also talked about the need for our students to refrain from large social gatherings. At that time, there were a few high schools that had to pivot to remote learning prior to starting the school year as a result of students congregating together and not practicing the COVID-19 safety protocols. In these situations, there's no way to determine whether or not those students are exposed to individuals that have COVID-19. So the schools had to do something to ensure the safety of their students and staff. As a result, they were closed for at least 14 days, and sports programs really didn't even have an opportunity to start. Since then, we've been witness to more high schools having to shut down because of large social gatherings of students. The CDC regulations that are pertinent to this is that if we have an individual that's in close contact with somebody with COVID-19, and in this case, we don't know, the student or individual would have to self-quarantine for 14 days. Irregardless of whether they take a test and they're negative. So it's really important that our students understand and our community understands the severity of having students congregate in an area without proper safety protocols. Last weekend, we did have an incident in our community. We were fortunate that we had the names of the students given to us that attended a social gathering. They were not following COVID-19 safety protocols. As a school system, we're obligated to do our own investigation. We confirmed those names, and as a result of this, we were able to have those students self-quarantine for 14 days. During this time, they cannot take part in any athletic programs or any in-person extracurricular activities. But if we weren't able to verify the students that were at that social gathering, we would have been very well faced with having to shut our high school hybrid learning program down for at least 14 days. And I'm saying at least 14 days because if any of those individuals tested positive for COVID-19, there would be a chain reaction as a result of that, and we may have ended up having to shut down for longer than 14 days and be forced to pivot into a remote learning program. So I can't overemphasize the importance of the community continuing to pull together and doing whatever they can to make sure that they keep our schools, our staff and students safe, and our community as safe as possible. This virus is relentless. If there is an opportunity, the COVID-19 positive identification rates will increase. So again, I'm appealing to our community to do whatever you can to work together to keep everybody as safe as possible.
I'd like to make some comments regarding that as well, and certainly if there are any other school committee members that would like to do so, that's fine. I would like to thank the Littleton Police Department for their efforts. If they had not been able to do the work that they did, they spent several hours literally in the middle of the night tracking down who was at the party, making sure they had the identifications, making sure those students were safe and got back home okay, but also making sure that we as a community understood who had been participating in that. And having that information that the police were able to attain, as Dr. Clenchey mentioned, helped us avoid a wider spread ramification from this situation. So we thank the police quite a bit for that effort. Also, just to make sure everybody understands, once we realized, the district realized this had transpired, it was the superintendent and the public health agent working together to make the determination about what the appropriate response was in terms of a public safety measures that needed to be taken in order to keep our students and staff safe. And in this particular instance, as Dr. Clenchey talked about, we were able to just restrict the impact to the students who had violated the distancing protocols and safety protocols that night, instead of having to impact a much larger community. So we appreciate the coordination there, but we were very fortunate in that regard that we were able to do that. In my mind, I feel like our parents have to understand that there's no guarantee that the next time we're going to be able to make that same determination. It's entirely possible that if our community cannot, or worse, will not help our kids make better decisions, the repercussions for that will affect every student in a building instead of just a couple dozen students as happened this time. As parents and adults, I feel like it's up to us to make sure our kids understand that in this situation that we're all dealing with, the decisions that our kids are making affect a lot of people, not just themselves. And we need to be more firm as parents in requiring that our kids understand this and adhere to it. By themselves as kids, they're going to continue to make risky choices. So it's imperative that we as parents and adults provide a much higher level of support and supervision that we may otherwise feel we should have to do. But in this situation, this is absolutely required that we continue as adults to keep an eye on what our kids are doing in the community. Otherwise, we're going to be regretting having to take other steps to make sure that we're keeping our students and staff safe on a day-to-day basis when they're at school or participating in extracurricular activities. So we were fortunate this time. We can't guarantee that that's going to be the case next time. I hope that the community understands this. Dr. Clenchey talked about there's plenty of coverage in the media about other districts that weren't as fortunate as we were and had to take very significant steps that were negatively impactful to all the students in the district. And we don't want to have to do that ourselves. So we're hoping that this is the last time that we have to reference this type of situation. And I really am imploring the parents and the adults to make sure that they are doing their job to help our kids realize how significant their decisions are for other people in this situation. Does anybody else have any comments or thoughts on any of that?
I would just, you said it perfectly, Mike, exactly what I was thinking. It really comes down to the parents. And it doesn't take much to, one party can set the whole district back weeks. So it's really important that parents take this seriously because we can't depend on that the kids are always going to make the right choices.
All right. Thank you. All right. Next, we're going to talk again about our public health metrics. I just need to get my file up. Give me a moment. So this is in our packet. I apologize. I had a very busy day today and I did some work this morning, but then was away from my desk from like noontime on. And Katrina Wilcox-Hagberg, who's been helping us with this, sent us her version of these types of data. And I just didn't get a chance to take a look at it, incorporate it. I'm looking, or was looking to see if she was online with us. If she is, I would be more than happy to have her.
Mike, I think she's in a library trustee meeting. She's
Okay,
very busy and dedicated.
Right, so we'll get to her next time. But we do have the ones that we put in our packet, and based on what she sent us, if we feel like it's worthwhile, we'll update this and get it online when we put these online. But looking at the slides that we have for this week, this is us downloading the data from the state on the community by community cases and testing positivity. This is pretty standard now, but you can see in the second slide, the town groupings that we're evaluating is Littleton, our border communities, our contiguous communities, and then out to the 495 belt and through Middlesex County into the Commonwealth. And we go past the graphic. Just a reminder that DESE is using average cases per day per 100,000 people in each community. In 4 cases, less than 4 cases per day is green. Between 4 and 8 cases is yellow, and greater than 8 cases is red. And we're trying to adhere to the Harvard Global Health Institute testing positivity threshold of 3% or less. Unfortunately for Littleton, if you go to the next slide, you can see the data by the communities that we're evaluating. We are just ever so slightly in the yellow zone with over 4 cases per day per 100,000 residents. Our actual case rate over the last 14 days is 0.43 average cases per day. But when you extrapolate that out per 100,000 residents to kind of make it an even playing field to evaluate apples to apples across communities, we have gone up for the 3rd week in a row and are now in the yellow zone, just over 4 cases per day per 100,000 residents. The border communities continue to remain in the green. The only other border community that's in the yellow with us, Littleton, is Westford, who's a little higher at 6.91. And then if we go out to the contiguous communities, we can see that they're in the green overall. A couple of communities, Chelmsford and Maynard, are in the yellow. But overall, that grouping, along with Littleton and our border communities, are still in the green. That 495 belt is up into the yellow, and Middlesex County and the Commonwealth overall are in the yellow. If we look at we just expanded out so you can see the communities in the 495 belt. There are a couple of red communities. Lowell and Marlborough are in the red. And if we just look at the summary, Littleton, just over 4.4 cases per day, 4.2 per 100,000 residents, puts us in the yellow. The border and continuous communities are over 3, but below the yellow threshold. But Route 495, Middlesex County and the state are over 5 and in the yellow. And then if we look at the trend, we can see that all of the different groupings of communities that we are looking at have been trending higher over the last 3 weeks. And, 4 of those groupings, Littleton and the 495 in Middlesex County in the state, are in their yellow. But the border and contiguous communities, while rising, are still in the green threshold, according to the DESE standard. One thing to keep in mind is that being in the yellow, according to DESE anyway, doesn't mean that you would change from your hybrid mode into a remote mode. They're really only suggesting that you go full remote if you are in the red. That's DESE's guidance, and it is guidance, it's not requirement. And we can have a discussion about that at some point if we want to after we present this. But right now we are in the yellow. One thing I would like to mention is that one of the communities in the contiguous communities grouping is Tingsboro, and we talked about them last week. They're in the pod of schools that we are going to compete against in athletics at the high school level. They were red last week, and we talked about how any schools that are in red would not be allowed to participate in athletics, so our kids wouldn't be exposed to anybody who is in a red community. But Tingsboro has gone back into the yellow. We did, Dr. Clenchey, I believe we talked this morning. Did you talk to Jim over at the Board of Health after looking at this data?
Yes, I did. And basically our conversation was very similar to what you've already said, Mike. Yellow indicates obviously there's an increase in positive cases in our community, but in terms of what we do, we just continue to monitor both our hard metrics and our soft metrics. When I was talking to Jim, he also indicated that it's not uncommon for these communities to go down in color after a couple of weeks because people drop off in terms of getting over COVID-19. So Tingsboro is a prime example of that. They were red, and 2 weeks later, they're back into the yellow band. So we're keeping our fingers crossed. As I said before, the best defense against COVID-19 is wearing a mask when you're out in public and washing your hands.
Yeah. And we have had no reports of positive tests with our students or staff, correct?
That's correct. Our soft metrics have been great. We've had few absences. And if I look at the absences that with students that had COVID-like symptoms, none of those students came back with positive test results. Our absenteeism rate has been low for staff and students to this point in time.
All right. And then just finishing up with the presentation, the other thing we look at is the percent positivity for testing. We are at 0.9. The goal is to be below 3. We are at 0.9. The border communities and contiguous communities are at 0.8. Route 495 is over 1 at 1.3, and the Middlesex County and the state are below 1 at 0.7 and 0.9. If we look at the graph, that is not really rising. It's rising slightly, but it is kind of flat, much flatter than the cases are. So that is one thing that we have continued to look at. And we talked about most of this, but in summary, Littleton, for the first time since we started tracking this, has crossed the yellow threshold with 6 cases in the last 14 days. Our average daily cases per 100,000 is just over the threshold at 4.2. Our percent positivity in the last 14 days is at 0.9. This is the 3rd week of increased cases that's put Littleton in the yellow, but our testing positivity remains levelish, rising somewhat slightly, but pretty level. And the border and surrounding communities remain green, with some individual communities in yellow and even in red in the wider groupings. But overall, the border and surrounding communities as a whole remain green, and Middlesex and County and the Massachusetts are yellow at the moment. So that's where we are with that. Any questions or comments from the school committee regarding that? Brad?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned, Kelly, the absentee rates and the soft metrics. I was interested in that and what internal steps we're taking to kind of track this outside of public health stuff. Can you give me a better sense? So absentee rate, staff and students, what else are we looking at to kind of get a sense of what's happening in our community?
We're also monitoring symptoms. If they have any signs of illness, we're classifying them as COVID-19 like symptoms or other symptoms. We're monitoring them if we recommend that they go see a health practitioner, et cetera, and are documenting the results of the visit, et cetera. So we're getting a real good profile in terms of being as proactive as we can to ensure that if we see something out of the ordinary, we're able to sit down and have a conversation, and that will certainly help shape our decisions.
That's really helpful, and I appreciate y'all doing that. I have a non-data question just as a follow-up to that, though. We had plans in place for nurses' offices and quarantine rooms and venting. Are those working as far as we can tell?
Yes, they are. They're working well, and we were fortunate enough to be able to hire 2 LPNs to help out in the district as well. That way, when we have situations where somebody has COVID-19 symptoms, we also have an LPN to help out, so our regular school nurse can take care of business as usual. We're really concerned about that at first because we needed to make sure that we had sufficient staff to deal with these situations, and we do. So it's a good feeling.
That's great. I'm glad we're able to bring those people on board. Mike, you addressed the DESI correlation. I had a question about that. This is, correct me if I'm wrong, this is our first set of data that might possibly include the effect of school reopenings, right? We're about basically 2 Wednesdays.
Yeah, for the most, I would agree with that because we've been open for 2 weeks, and the data that we're tracking is presented in 2 weeks.
Right.
This week, the previous week, and the week before that.
So it's encouraging that we're not seeing spikes, but it's also we're just now starting to see the impact of potential impact of school reopenings. I guess my final comment is just that I don't know which number I should focus on. If I should focus on the more encouraging, 0.9%, which is still less than 1/3 of the threshold, or the steady tick up of the case count. And I just hope we as a school committee will we'll keep looking at all of this and really trust the public health experts to help us get a sense of what's going on. Because I just don't know which one's more important.
Yeah, I mean, in the email that Katrina sent us today with her data, which again, I apologize today, I didn't have a good chance to take a look at. She talked some about that. I think it would be a good idea for us to all read that and think about it and evaluate it. And if we have questions for her, we can certainly direct them to her. And if we think it's worthwhile after evaluating that, maybe it's worth a discussion at our next meeting. I know that the Board of Health has formed a COVID action or COVID action task force, I guess is what they're calling it. And I know that Katrina is on that as well. Okay. So as they go through their process, they may have some thoughts about that might be a focus for them. So it'll be interesting to see what they come up with and present to us. I think they just formed that last week. So I don't think they've gotten very far yet. But they are formed and active. So I agree. I think that as we get farther into the school year, and we also, it's not just schools opening, obviously college has been opening, and then the governor is continuing to evaluate opportunities for increasing the opening of businesses and commerce and social life and things like that. But that's countered with, with the weather changing and people going to do more indoors. A lot of the opening of the economy was predicated on outdoor spaces. Yeah. It may not be as available in the next few weeks. So it'll be interesting to see how all that adds up together and impacts the state. So, all right, anybody else? Okay. Really a short agenda. There's nothing else that we have on our agenda, so we will get to the second point already for input from interested citizens. If there's anybody who would like to speak before the school committee, you can use the raise your hand function. All right, seeing none. All right.
Mike, I don't know the protocol on this. I was able to talk with Lynn Snow this afternoon about CPAC stuff. It's not on the agenda, but I wanted to mention it to the public. Yeah, sure. I think this might be appropriate time.
I would consider that part of the subcommittee type stuff. We have our 3 things that we always talk about at subcommittee, but yeah, absolutely, Brad, go ahead.
I'll wait, no problem.
No, we're basically in it now.
Okay.
we're going right to subcommittees. Go ahead.
No, just so Lynn and I were able to talk. We wanted to wait a couple weeks so we could get the school year started. There are 2 things. One is that we are going to reorganize, reconstitute our town CPAC. It is not currently functioning, and so Lynn and I, as a member of the school committee, and her in her official role, will be the ones to facilitate the reorganization of this, and then let the parents run it. But we're excited about that. We know it's an important part of what we do as a district and how we serve our students. And Lynn, correct me, do we want to share the date now, or? Yeah, so I think we agreed we're going to try to get it started on, I think, Tuesday, October 13th, and we will send and I will post things. We'll send an email to all the district's parents. It'll just be an organizational meeting and start the conversation. And so we hope to get that going, obviously, within the next 2 weeks then, and we're pretty excited about it. What did I miss, Lynn?
That's it. I just, the meeting will be encouraging people to attend because they need to attend a meeting in order to vote for the board. So they'll need to attend, and then a subsequent meeting will be held in order to have everybody vote for board positions.
So I just wanted to announce that, Mike, and let people know that the email will be coming. If it's appropriate now, I'd also can I just ask Lynn how things are going? It's been a couple weeks. We all know that accommodating our students' IEPs and 504 plans was always going to be one of the most challenging things we're trying to do in this setting. Do you mind speaking to that, Lynn, a little bit?
No, I don't mind speaking to that. I mean, we're at day 11, so there's that. I think it's an interesting question. I think it's somewhat subjective. It's based on individual perspective, the data that I have to kind of base it on. but I do think all things considered, everything that we've really had to do, we've had to essentially restructure how we're delivering a lot of the IEP services. And, you know, meeting FAPE, looking at it through the lens of a blended learning model. I think there's a lot of positives that have come out of it. I think staff are looking very closely at their practices, probably, you know, closer than they have in recent times. And I think that that's a good thing. I think we've been able to be very creative. I think we've had to think very much out of the box, much more creative than I think I've ever been in my 24 years. I think, you know, that being said, we're encountering like a lot of anticipated challenges, but also, you know, unanticipated challenges. You can only, you know, plan for and account for so many things. And so, you know, so are we seeing more challenges at the beginning of this school year? Absolutely. But I think we knew that that was going to be our current reality. I feel like the 10 days that we had was incredibly invaluable. I think that gave the staff the planning time that they needed. They had to develop individual learning plans for all of the students, which was a pretty significant task. But I think the flip side of that is it gave staff the opportunity and really kind of pushed open the door for dialogue with parents sooner than in typical years, actually. Sometimes teachers are waiting, you know, a week or two to reach out, where a lot of that was able to kind of get underway even before the school year technically started, which was good. I mean, I think everybody's going to great lengths trying to make a less than ideal situation palatable and you know, do what we can to make things work. But I think even with that, there's inherent limitations. You know, I think that I'm proud of the work that everybody has been doing. I think that there's more work to be done. I think there's more creative ways that we can even push our thinking further and see how we can get as many students as we can in person and in front of us for as much time as we can. And I think that that's critical. I think that we all need to be very cognizant of the stresses that everybody is under with regard to this, both families, students, you know, and staff, because, you know, we're definitely not our best selves when we're stressed and anxious. And I think we need to make sure that we're all prioritizing self-care and stress management so that we can be more productive and make better decisions. I mean, I think overall, what has been really nice is I've received a lot of positive feedback. So I think as far as the calls that are coming into my office, the emails that I'm getting, the positive feedback I'm getting is outweighing kind of the, you know, negative feedback or, you know, we need to do this differently or change this. That's going to come always. And that's important information for the office to receive too, because we need that feedback and we need that input and we need to be able to take that into consideration. You know, so I think at the end of it all, I think that I'm looking at what other districts are doing all of the time and kind of weighing out, you know, what we are doing and making sure that I want us to be the best. I want us to be able to do, you know, more and great work. That's just kind of who I am. And I think that I feel confident that we're there. I think we're doing a lot. And I think we're being able to offer a lot of creative opportunities for students. And I think we just need to keep working and moving forward. I think there's more work to do.
All right, thank you, Lynn. All right. Continuing on with subcommittee reports, I know that Cheryl Herrick-Stella, our town finance director, sent an email to me and Dr. Clenchey and Steve Mark talking about starting the budgeting process. So I am going to forward that to Justin and Matt because it's not my problem anymore. It's your guys' problem. But we are getting into October. That is typically the time where we start the budget process. So you guys can expect to jump in on there. Steve Mark, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I just want to mention the date. It's October 13th, and I'm working with Cheryl on finding a time.
Okay. All right. So guys can get ready to come out of the gate with the budget process. All right, is there?
Wait.
Oh,
It's gonna be
Go ahead,
awesome.
yep. All right. Timlin is our PMBC rep. She's not with us yet, so we'll skip that one. And who's doing policy? Is that Brad and Timlin?
I think Timlin and I are,
Okay,
which my uncertainty should indicate I don't have much to report.
right. No, that's fine. I think we talked about, we've been meeting so frequently in the summer that we kind of suspended our work on the subcommittees, which we don't typically do any work on those in the summers. But I think we're getting far enough into, now that we're almost 3 weeks into school, we got to start thinking about getting back into our regular routines in addition to all this stuff we need to continue doing related to COVID and what we've talked about. The budget subcommittee is going to kick off, and hopefully the policy subcommittee can get going, and we'll have a productive year from a school committee perspective. I don't doubt it, and we just need to get going. All right. Anything else? All right, then I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second,
Motion made and seconded. I'll take a roll call vote. Matt,
Matt Hunt, yes.
Brad,
Brad Austin, yes.
Justin,
Justin McCarthy, yes.
and Mike Fontanella votes yes as well. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Dorothy, Bettina, and LCTV, Judy and Dave. We appreciate it. We'll see you all soon enough.
Have a great
Good
meeting.
luck.